So for today's Honda riding tip, we're going to be tackling ruts. Riding a rut well is pretty much one of the holy grails of motocross, trail riding included. There's a lot of technique that comes into being able to do a rut well, but I want to make it easy for you. The first thing that you need to be able to master is using this finger on your front brake, especially on these modern bikes with the good brakes. Of course on an older one then you might need two, but you need to be able to use front brake. But you don't need a lot of it. And the thing is that you want to be able to use your front brake until at least halfway through the corner if necessary. That little bit of extra friction on the front wheel just helps it stick in the rut. Another big bonus of being able to use your front brake into a rut is that if you don't lean too much, it doesn't mean that you need to get tougher and just lean further. It means that you just have to use your front brake deeper through the corner. The more front brake you're using, the more it slows you down to match the actual lean that you've got. And then once you've got the lean right, then you can think about getting on the power and you'll actually stay in ruts much more consistent. A really important note that doesn't get brought up much. When you need to start powering, it needs to be a small power. That's another reason why people pop out of the ruts too soon. That first turn of the throttle is just too much. So if you can actually use a little bit of throttle with the front brake still on, it can just load the back suspension up. And it just makes it a really smooth transition between your turning phase and then starting to power. If you haven't got enough turn done yet and you're starting to power too hard, your bike's going to stand up too soon, you're going to have to back off. So a big part of your riding, and especially in your training, is to be able to practice coming into ruts, being able to have your finger there on the front brake, ready to use, but then being able to do a little turn of the throttle at first and holding it there for a while until you know that you can give it more and you're not going to have to back off again before the corner's finished. That leads into the separating out of the braking phase and the powering phase, and realizing that there's that cornering phase. You know, there's that part of the track where you need to just get turn done. You can't be braking hard, you can't be powering hard, you just want to be getting the turn over with. And that all comes through leaning the bike as far as you can. So you want to be able to embrace the lean, the fact that you can get it tipped over quite far. Anyone who knows a little bit about riding ruts is going to tell you that you need to be looking ahead. One thing I really focus hard on is not dropping my chin when I'm getting to that intense part of the corner. As long as I'm keeping my chin up, even if my eyes are looking down, I've still got that peripheral vision above where my eyes are focused on. And that tells you where the rest of the rut is. It helps you to stay in there 10 times better than if you were to drop your chin and you lose that peripheral vision from your helmet visor. If you're really struggling with a rut, try standing up through the first half of it. If you need to, you could stand up through the whole thing. It feels scary, but if you're standing nice and low to the bike, you've got much more ability to control the bike, to be able to keep it in the rut where you want to keep it. Once you feel comfortable, then you can sit down and you can think about starting to power out. A real big warning about standing up through ruts though. You've got to make sure that your toes aren't going to catch on to the inside of the rut. So first thing you want to do is you want to move your feet back on the pegs a little bit so that you're standing on the balls of your feet more. That foot that's closest to the ground, I actually just lift it straight up off the peg sometimes if I'm standing up through the rut. You don't have to put your leg out in front of you all the time. One of the beauties of the modern four-stroke is that you can ride through a whole corner in third gear if you have to, without any risk of it going to stall. If you can be in that high gear, then when you do want to turn the throttle, it means that it's not so sudden and snappy. And then when you get to the part of the corner that you want to accelerate on, then you can just turn on the throttle and it can pull you out. And of course, if you need a little bit of extra power, then you can always just slip that clutch a little bit. But through the rut, I try to not have my finger on the clutch. That means that I'm not going to be tempted to use the back brake as much. And it means that I'm just going to really focus on my front brake and on my throttle control. The last real technique with riding ruts that I want to touch on today is about your inside leg. Ideally, you're going to be leaning over quite far. So you're going to have to get your leg higher than you normally would around a berm or a flat corner. Personally, I try and get my leg up on top of my radiator shroud, but I really want to point my toe. If you're going through a rut and you're able to point your toe when you're going through it, then your body just locks in there. You get strength that you wouldn't normally have. Don't be afraid to lean it over really far into a rut if you can. They've got a wall on them. That's more traction than you'd ever have around a flat corner. And if you know that you've got your front brake sticking your front wheel in there and you're going to use gentle throttle control to keep your wheels in there, then you can start leaning over further than you ever would imagine. And that's a feeling that I have to tell you is incredibly hard to beat. So if you've got any handlebar scraping action of you railing a rut, we'd love to see it, so send it to this website.